Environmental Affairs Minister Barbara Creecy says the package of agreements settled at Glasgow during the COP26 conference strikes what she calls the right balance to manage the differences and the needs of different countries. The conference wrapped up over the weekend. There were promises made to reduce the amount of coal used to generate electricity and to stop deforestation. Happy Nkambule is the senior political advisor for Greenpeace Africa. Happy, good afternoon to you. The minister says it's the right package of agreements. Do you believe it's the right package of agreements?
Good afternoon. And no, not really, because there's parts of the package that don't meet the actual urgency of climate change. So we have to look at it in two folds. From the side of the government, from the side of COP, looking at what was actually put on the table versus what was needed. It's a balanced package. But in terms of the reality of climate change and what people are feeling on the ground, it's not a balanced package, because we still have issues around loss and damage. We still have issues around how countries are actually taking into consideration coal, gas, and oil, and we still have issues around the adaptation part of our climate change response. So there is a lopside to the package. It just depends on which viewpoint you're looking at it from.
I mean, to be critical of our government for a moment, I mean, we say we take climate change seriously, that it's a big issue for us. And then, I mean, our problem really is coal. Every electricity expert I speak to says we can move to renewable energy very, very quickly. Our minister, I don't mean our environment minister, I mean our energy minister, appears to have a different view.
Yeah, and just recently, we all know that there has been some exploration rights that were granted to a multinational company called Shell that will be exploring around the East Coast, at least around Eastern Cape. And then it's something along the lines of denying science, at least in some pockets of government. So it's a bit of a weird one when you try to understand what government is saying. On one hand, it says we believe that the science is true and climate change is a problem. It is an increasing crisis. On the other hand, we're basically doing the very same thing that we should be doing, creating more of the crisis. And at some point, something has to give. At some point, the government will have to make a decision as to which direction it is following. From our perspective as Greenpeace, we don't think that the doublespeak is actually helping, because at any given point in time, procurement plans for renewable energy can be curtailed just because a government official or a government minister basically says X, Y, or Z without following through in terms of the long-term commitment. So it's not helpful. It's quite hypocritical. It's doublespeak. It's confusing. It creates uncertainty. It's just one of those issues that we're still stuck with as a legacy.
I've never find politicians confusing, Happy. The agreements that have been reached at COP26, I mean, what's absolutely crucial, and I realize your view that that the world could have gone a lot further. There's a big argument around whether it will limit global warming to 1.5% above what's called the pre-industrial average, in other words, before the Industrial Revolution, or whether it'll, actually go higher than that. Never mind all of that for a moment. What's been agreed to, are you confident that countries will actually do that it'll be properly enforced?
Well, what we know, at least, right, if I can put it like this, is that when countries put on commitments, pledges, or whatever they call them, contributions, they tend to do quite a number of them. It's just a problem when we think that the entirety of the package that they tend to put forward is what they're going to do. So with what we have on the table, everyone doing what they say they're going to do, including the different bilateral agreements, we're going to a world which is beyond 2.4 degrees from pre-industrial levels, you know what I mean? So we are actually way above the 1.5. And if we want to go along the trajectory that we're going with, we're most likely not going to meet 1.5. We're going to exceed it even more. So if countries systematically on a yearly basis or in a more frequent and more periodic basis starts to increase their contributions, we can see that implementation will happen at a higher rate. It's just that even what they put on the table is not enough. So if they're only going to implement 80%, we're only going to be getting 80% of the actual reductions that we need in order to get to 1.5 degrees.
I mean, in a way, there's a massive science problem, climate change, but there's also a political problem. That's why you're a senior political advisor for Greenpeace. If you look at the political party manifestos during the local government elections, from what I can see, most of them do mention climate change. The EFF, I think, mentions it more than the others, but the EFF's manifesto is about twice as long as the others, so they've got a bit more space, I suppose, to be fair. Do you believe that the constituencies the political parties serve take climate change seriously. And what I'm really asking, I suppose, is I understand the long-term consequences. I'm not arguing with you about that. What I'm saying is, do you think people realize how serious this is? And when you consider someone really just wants a job to feed themselves and their family, I don't know if, working on a coal mine is something that bothers them. I don't think it would bother me. I'd want to earn the money.
Yeah, those are considerations that we need to think about, right? What you would want, at least in a more ideal state, or in a democracy that's functioning in a way that also represents broader society other than at least a lobbied interest, is that you would have governments, you'd have political parties starting to chart a path away from the things that are creating climate change. So, for example, as you go for the manifestos in many cases contradict each other. So you have one side where a political party like the EFF will say something along climate and something along environmentalism, but on the other side, putting down the very same kinds of projects which are archetypal to being negative to environmental growth or environmental sustainability. Then you have a situation like the ANC, which is entrenched around how to build consensus on climate or any other issue, speak about climate, but then at the same time do the very same thing that is contributing to climate change and environmental degradation. So the politicians or the political parties don't take their sense of climate change seriously. People take it seriously. And the only problem, or rather one of the main problems, that with the manner in which we articulate it, we tend to make it an environmental issue or a solely political issue, but it's also economic. So coal mines aren't going to be able to continue working if we've got a carbon border adjustment tax that is implemented in the EU or in any other country where we're exporting coal or any of our services. So if our politicians and the political parties are starting to see it more as a political, economic, and environmental issue, which is basically the whole thing, society, we would have a different kind of understanding. And the manifestos would be much more mainstream in climate change rather than looking at it as an environmental and sectoral issue.
Happy Nkambule, thanks very much indeed, Senior Political Advisor for Greenpeace Africa. Do appreciate it.